Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be looking into the Budapest Memorandum.
All right.
You've provided us with some really interesting material on this agreement.
Yeah.
And we're hoping to sort of unpack its origins, its promises, and how it ultimately unraveled.
Right.
This agreement is a really powerful way to look at international relations, especially in the context of the Cold War
Absolutely.
and in the context of nuclear nonproliferation.
Yeah. To understand the Budapest Memorandum, we have to go back to the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991.
Right.
And this event left Ukraine, which was a newly independent nation, with, well, let's just say a daunting inheritance.
Oh, yeah.
The world's third largest nuclear arsenal.
Wow.
That's 1,900 strategic nuclear warheads,
Goodness.
plus numerous tactical weapons.
That's a lot of weapons for any country to inherit,
Absolutely.
let alone one that's just starting out.
Yeah, and it triggered widespread concern across the globe.
I can imagine.
Yeah, the international community, especially the United States and Russia, put immense pressure on Ukraine to relinquish this arsenal.
Right.
Because the worry was that such a large nuclear stockpile in the hands of a new and potentially unstable country,
Yeah.
could pose a serious threat to global security and just increase the risk of nuclear proliferation.
So this is where the Budapest Memorandum comes into play.
Exactly.
Signed in 1994,
Yes.
it offered Ukraine security assurances from Russia, the United States, and the United Kingdom
Right.
in exchange for completely denuclearizing.
Precisely. It was a grand diplomatic bargain.
Yeah.
On paper, it seemed like a win for everyone involved. Ukraine would get security guarantees,
Right.
and the world would be rid of a massive nuclear arsenal.
Right.
The memorandum, while not legally binding, made some very significant pledges. It promised respect for Ukraine's sovereignty and its existing borders.
And it also included a commitment to refrain from any economic pressure or coercion against Ukraine.
Yes, that's correct. The memorandum explicitly stated that the signatory countries would not use force or the threat of force against Ukraine and would refrain from using economic pressure to influence its policies.
Okay. And crucially, the memorandum also addressed the nuclear threat.
Absolutely. It included a commitment from Russia, the U.S., and the U.K. not to use nuclear weapons against Ukraine.
Right.
Furthermore, they promised assistance if Ukraine ever faced aggression involving nuclear weapons.
So in response to these assurances, Ukraine took a monumental step.
Yes.
By 1996, they had fully complied with the agreement.
Right.
They transferred all their nuclear warheads to Russia for dismantlement, and they dismantled all related infrastructure.
Yes.
This was a major accomplishment for global non-proliferation efforts.
It was a remarkable achievement. For a time, the agreement seemed to be working. There was a period of relative peace and stability. It appeared that the Budapest Memorandum had achieved its goals. However, as we know, this stability was short-lived.
Yeah, in 2014, the situation changed dramatically.
Right.
That's when Russia, in a direct violation of the Budapest Memorandum, annexed Crimea.
Right.
This is a Ukrainian territory with significant strategic importance, particularly because it houses the base of Russia's Black Sea Fleet in Sevastopol.
Yeah.
And
Russia's actions were a blatant disregard for the commitments they had made in the Budapest Memorandum.
right.
They violated Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, shattering the fragile trust that had been built.
And the situation escalated further with Russia's involvement in eastern Ukraine.
Yes. Following the annexation of Crimea, pro-Russian separatists in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions of eastern Ukraine declared independence, igniting a conflict that continues to this day.
Right.
There is substantial evidence of Russia's direct military support for these separatists, compounding their violation of the Budapest Memorandum.
The international community reacted swiftly, condemning Russia's actions and imposing economic sanctions.
The United States and the European Union led the condemnation, but despite these actions, no direct military intervention was undertaken to defend Ukraine's territorial integrity. This lack of a robust response exposed the limitations of the international community's ability to enforce agreements and raised serious questions about the value of security assurances.
The repercussions of Russia's actions went far beyond Ukraine. The violation of the Budapest Memorandum had profound geopolitical consequences, shaking global trust in international agreements and raising concerns about the future of nuclear nonproliferation.
Yeah, it really had a chilling effect on international relations.
Yeah.
It undermined that that very foundation of trust upon which these agreements are built.
Right.
If a country like Ukraine, which possessed the world's third largest nuclear arsenal,
Yeah.
could be vulnerable despite giving up its weapons in exchange for security guarantees,
Right.
what message does that send to other countries facing potential threats?
Yeah, it raises serious doubts about the effectiveness of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. The NPT framework.
Exactly.
The NPT relies on a delicate balance.
Yes.
Non-nuclear states agree to remain non-nuclear in exchange for security assurances.
Right.
And support for the peaceful uses of nuclear energy.
Precisely. But if those security assurances are not upheld, as we've seen with Ukraine,
Right.
what incentive do non-nuclear states have to remain non-nuclear?
Yeah.
Especially when they perceive potential threats.
Right.
It creates a dangerous precedent
Yeah.
and could embolden countries like North Korea and Iran, which
Right.
have been pursuing nuclear capabilities despite international pressure.
Right.
They might view Ukraine's experience as justification for their actions,
Yeah.
arguing that possessing nuclear weapons is the only way to guarantee their security.
Yeah.
In a world where international agreements can be so easily disregarded.
Right. This situation puts a spotlight on the role of the guarantors.
Yes,
The U.S., the U.K.,
of course.
and of course Russia.
Russia's justifications for its actions in Crimea and eastern Ukraine have been widely rejected by the international community.
Right.
They claim to be protecting ethnic Russians and their interests.
Uh-huh.
But these arguments have been seen as a thinly veiled attempt to expand their sphere of influence.
Yeah. The U.S. and the U.K. responded with condemnation and sanctions.
Right.
These measures demonstrate their disapproval of Russia's actions.
Yes.
But they have not deterred Russia.
Right.
This raises concerns about the credibility of security assurances provided by these nations,
Yeah.
especially in the eyes of smaller states facing potential threats.
Yeah, the Budapest Memorandum being a political agreement rather than a legally binding treaty
Yeah.
has been criticized for its lack of enforcement mechanism.
Right.
This distinction proved crucial when Russia violated its commitments.
Yeah.
There were no clear consequences outlined for such a breach,
Right.
leaving Ukraine with limited options for recourse.
It highlights a fundamental flaw in relying solely on non-binding agreements for security.
Yes.
While they can serve as important diplomatic tools, they lack the teeth of legally binding treaties.
Exactly. This contrast is strikingly evident when we compare the Budapest Memorandum to NATO's Article 5.
Right.
Article 5 mandates a collective defense response if any member state is attacked.
Yeah.
It's a legally binding commitment.
The absence of a similar robust enforcement mechanism in the Budapest Memorandum left Ukraine vulnerable.
Absolutely.
It exposed the limitations of relying on security assurances
Yeah.
without a framework for action.
The Budapest Memorandum, therefore, serves as a potent case study.
Yeah.
It reveals the complexities and fragility of international security arrangements
Yeah.
and underscores the need for strong, enforceable agreements,
Right.
particularly in the realm of nuclear nonproliferation
Oh.
and territorial integrity.
It also highlights the crucial role of international solidarity
Yes.
and decisive action in upholding these agreements and deterring aggression. So the legacy of the Budapest Memorandum, it's complicated.
It is.
It did facilitate a significant step towards nuclear nonproliferation.
Yeah.
But its violation has raised serious concerns about, how effective these types of agreements can be
Right.
in actually guaranteeing security.
Yeah, it serves as a stark reminder, I think, that diplomatic efforts and security assurances, while essential,
Yeah.
need to be backed by robust enforcement mechanisms
Yeah.
and a willingness from the international community
Yeah.
to act decisively when those assurances are threatened.
What lessons can we learn from the Budapest Memorandum to prevent similar situations in the future?
Well, one key takeaway, I think, is the need for stronger legal frameworks
Yeah.
for security assurances.
Uh-huh.
Future agreements should ideally be enshrined
Right.
in legally binding treaties
Right.
with clearly defined consequences for violations.
Yeah.
This would add a layer of accountability
Right.
and potentially deter aggression by raising the stakes
Right.
for potential violators.
What about the role of the international community?
Well, international solidarity is paramount.
Right.
When a nation's sovereignty and territorial integrity are violated,
Yeah.
a united and resolute response from the international community is crucial.
Yeah.
This could involve a combination of diplomatic pressure,
Right.
economic sanctions,
Yeah.
and if necessary, military intervention.
So it seems like finding a balance between diplomacy and deterrence is critical.
Indeed, diplomatic efforts to resolve conflicts peacefully should always be the primary approach.
Okay.
However, these efforts must be backed by a credible deterrent,
Yeah.
demonstrating that the international community is prepared to defend the principles of sovereignty
Yeah.
and territorial integrity.
The Budapest Memorandum ultimately underscores the complex
Yeah.
and often unpredictable nature of international relations.
It does.
It reminds us that trust, while essential,
Yeah.
needs to be carefully cultivated and reinforced
Absolutely.
through concrete actions
Yes.
and a commitment to upholding agreements.
The Budapest Memorandum offers valuable lessons for navigating the ever-evolving landscape of global security.
It does, yes.
It highlights the need for continuous evaluation and adaptation of international agreements to ensure they remain relevant and effective in addressing these new challenges.
Right.
The future of non-proliferation and global security depends on learning from past mistakes and forging a more robust and responsive international order.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today for this deep dive into the Budapest Memorandum.
It's been my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.